Good afternoon out west. Happy Monday wherever you are. I'm Rick Leventhal, and this is the Leventhal Report. By now, I'm sure you've heard there was a second assassination attempt on former President Trump over the weekend. But this time, Secret Service agents were able to fire several shots at the attacker before the former president was in range. The suspect fled and was busted soon after. It happened at 1:30 Sunday afternoon at the Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach. Authorities say the suspect, 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ralph, had camped in a wooded area just outside the edge of the course for 12 hours, apparently lying in wait for the former president with a scoped rifle, a bag of food, and a GoPro camera strapped to the fence so he could, authorities say, capture the assassination attempt on video. Ralph has a prior felony conviction for illegal weapon possession and reportedly made regular donations to Democratic candidates and campaigns. He's got a Biden-Harris sticker on his pickup truck in Hawaii.
I figured that.
He was also extremely vocal about supporting Ukraine in its war with Russia, making pleas online to others to raise money, and even volunteered to travel to Kiev and join the fight alongside Ukrainian forces. Ralph apparently did travel to Ukraine, but apparently never actually fought with Ukrainian soldiers against Russia. But what's most important about this story isn't Ralph's history or past behavior or affiliations. What's most important is how this guy was able to find a place to hide and be within 400 to 500 yards of the former president when he was playing a round of golf. This is just 2 months after another would-be assassin grazed Trump in the ear at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, almost killed him. How could this guy get this close without being spotted sooner? You could look at this a couple of different ways. You could argue whatever increases in security were made to protect Trump actually worked, since agents spotted this guy and fired at him and then caught him when he ran. Or you could argue this guy never should have been able to secure a spot and lie in wait for 12 hours.
That's true, he shouldn't have.
Should have been able to get as close as he did to the former president. And think about what it must be like today for Trump. One guy shoots him in the ear, another guy has a GoPro rolling and scoped rifle in position to take him out a few weeks later. How does Trump feel safe going anywhere? What confidence should he have that he'll be protected? And where's the outrage from the media and other political leaders? Anytime there's a school shooting, there are calls from all corners to ban weapons and beef up security and do more to stop the violence. Are you hearing those calls today from those same politicians? And
nope, you're not.
Because you should be. And how many billionaires are there in this world who would put themselves in harm's way like Trump has to run for president and try to fix what's broken in America? How many others would risk their lives the way Trump is?
None.
Trump deserves praise for his courage.
He sure does.
And he deserves the tightest security possible every single day moving forward to make sure something like this does not happen again. But it did happen again. Now for more on our top story. The Martin County Sheriff's Office has released the body cam footage of the arrest of the would-be assassin. Watch this.
Driver! Take 2 steps to your right! Take 2 steps to your right! Driver! Go straight back! Keep walking!
That guy needs to be thrown in prison forever.
Let's check in with our senior correspondent, John Huddy, who has more details on the investigation into this second assassination attempt on Donald Trump. John?
Rick, the acting director of the U.S. Secret Service said in a news conference this evening that based upon the circumstances and the OTR, the off-the-record movements by former President Trump, that the Secret Service's security procedures and protocols worked as planned. Now, tonight, we're getting a clearer picture about the 58-year-old suspect, Ryan Ralph's background, his radical ideologies, and in some cases, extremist views. Law enforcement officials say they're executing search warrants in North Carolina, where he lived, and most recently where he lived in Hawaii, while interviewing family and friends about Ralph's background. Earlier, we saw FBI investigators go going into the tree line here on Summit Boulevard along the Trump International Golf Club, collecting what appeared to be and bagging up more evidence as the investigation continues. Phone data shows that Ralph waited in the tree line along the Trump International Golf Course for 12 hours Sunday, from about
12 hours, and they
1:51
couldn't even
a.m.
find him.
until 1:30 p.m. when a United States Secret
That's
Service
just
agent
wrong.
who was walking the perimeter of the greens saw the barrel of an SKS-style rifle protruding from the fence line and opened fire. The federal complaint says that Ralph, who was arraigned in federal court today on 2 federal gun charges, fled the scene in a stolen truck and was apprehended a short time later along I-95 in Martin County, just north of Palm Beach County. Now, Ralph most recently lived in Hawaii, but had a long criminal history in North Carolina. He was a staunch advocate of Ukraine, even traveling there to fight in the
That's
war,
evil.
despite having no formal military training or background. He was also critical of Donald Trump, who he said he once supported, even advocating for Iran to assassinate Trump in his self-published book. But there remains a number of questions tonight. 1, his motive. 2, did he have help or did he act alone? And 3, how did he know Trump would be playing at that location and time? Trump's schedule was not public. Did he just chance it, or did he have some information, or was he tipped off? The acting director of the U.S. Secret Service says this was an off-the-record movement, an OTR by Trump, that the U.S. Secret Service's protocols worked as planned.
What we did yesterday was exercise our emergency plan based on the number of tactical assets and the highest level of protection that we are providing. Because yesterday was an off-the-record movement. Off-the-record. And the president wasn't even really supposed to go there. It was not on his official schedule. And so we put together a security plan, and that security plan worked.
He added the U.S. Secret Service procedures and protocols will be reviewed and certainly revised if necessary. A detention hearing for Ralph is scheduled for September 23rd. Former President Trump, meantime, has a rally still scheduled for tomorrow in Flint, Michigan, and then Wednesday in Uniondale, New York. Rick?
John, thanks for that. Let's welcome in former Assistant Director with the FBI, Mark Morgan. Mark, great to have you on the show today to talk about this. Ralph was charged with possession of a firearm by a felon and possession of a firearm with an obliterated serial number, but it sounds like those charges were filed just to hold him until more charges are brought. What should we expect that he'll eventually be charged with?
That's correct. No, he'll be eventually, there'll be what's called a superseding indictment, and he'll be charged with the attempted assassination of President Trump, no doubt, as the investigation unfolds. But as you said, right now, this is typical what they do. They just go ahead and file the charges that they know that they have at this time beyond a reasonable doubt to just make sure that he's not released into the community.
Now, we heard from law enforcement officials that, and I believe it was the head of the Secret Service who said that things went as they were supposed to go. And I can understand that argument because they did fire at this guy and chase him off before he was able to take a shot at the president. Before we get to this soundbite I want to play for you, your initial reaction, I see you shaking your head.
No, Rick, look, I disagree, and here's why. That Secret Service agent, what he did was incredible. There were incredible acts that were done by individuals. But to think about this, he saw a black barrel that's less than an inch in diameter sticking through a black chain link fence. That itself, that observation was almost divine intervention in of itself. You change a couple of circumstances, like maybe the sun is in his eyes, he doesn't see that. We're talking about a dead president. And in his actions, that should have been the last line of defense in a layered approach. What should have happened is he should have never been there. He was there right now. We're being told, Rick, that he was there for 12 hours. Hey, look, before President stepped on that golf course, that perimeter should have been swept. There should have been law enforcement agents or officers on the perimeter to make sure that nobody could get access to this. This OTR, off the record, it's not like he was in a motorcade and asked to stop for a slice of pizza in the Bronx in New York. This was a golf course that he has visited countless times. The Secret Service knows this well. They know every aspect, every foot of this golf course. They know exactly where every single vulnerability is in that golf course, and that's exactly where the shooter was. The shooter positioned himself at one of the most vulnerable locations in between holes 5 and 6, and the Secret Service knew this. So this is not a success. It was individual acts of success, but the overall plan was not.
Okay, fair enough. This is the acting Secret Service Director, Ronald Rowe, giving a reason as to why he says security was not up to par. I want to play this for you.
So at this time, it was an off-the-record movement, meaning it was not on the former president's official schedule.
So you have a problem with that. I'm still wondering how this guy even knew that Trump would be there.
That's exactly right. But I'll go a further step. So that's a very important question, Rick. But I'll go a step further. So how did he get there? We're literally repeating Butler. It's just in a different state, in a different location. How in the heck did an individual get within a shooting range with a long rifle and some sort of optic on it? That was a fairly easy shot to make. That's what we should be talking about. The fact that an individual Secret Service agent miraculously saw this and engaged and stopped them, that's not a measure of success. That's lucky. I mean, as a tactical instructor, we used to call that luck skill building. He should have never been in that location. That should have been locked down. The sheriff said yesterday, he said it. He said that it's because he's not the president of the United States, which goes to the heart of one of the biggest problems with Secret Service. I think that they approach this as a category methodology, meaning it depends on whether you're president, vice president, former president, rather than a threat-based methodology. This president, President Trump, first of all, the former president, he's the current GOP presidential candidate. There's only been one assassination attempt. We know Iran is looking to kill him, and the most recognizable face on the face of the planet. I don't give a crap whether he's a former president or current president. We should be giving him the requisite level of protection based on the threat. And I will submit to you that was not done with this attempt.
Listen, Mark, you're an expert in the field, okay? And I really respect you, and I agree with what you're saying. And I'm kind of confused why every stop that he makes, ever since Butler, wouldn't be completely cleaned, completely checked. And that would include the perimeter of the golf course. And I understand that would require a lot of manpower, but isn't the whole point of this to protect this guy? And I don't know how Trump goes off on the road after this with any confidence, because what we've seen, as you pointed out, is that people are breaching the perimeter. People are getting into position to take clear shots at this man. And after the first, it shouldn't have happened once. But after it happened once, it should never have happened again, Mark.
Rick, I agree. If you and I would have talked, I know we talked, but if you and I would have talked a couple days after Butler, and you would have asked me this question, hey, Mark, do you think that the Secret Service will allow anyone to get within an average shooting distance of the president ever again? I would have laughed and said, of course not. But here we are 60 days later, and the same exact thing happened. And again, the incredible actions by that Secret Service agent, Rick, I'll say it again, that was a last line of defense. That shouldn't be the first line of defense, right? I mean, it's incredible that the acting director is lauding this as a success when you change a couple of things. Like I said, sun gets in this agent's eyes. He doesn't see it. The president makes his turn, from hole 5, and we're talking about a dead president. And another thing, too, is, look, I know after the fact law enforcement did some good stuff to apprehend this guy, but also what we're not talking about is how did they apprehend this guy? It was the civilian. It was a civilian that had the wherewithal to say maybe he heard the shots, didn't know what was going on, but he took pictures of the guy and the vehicle and got that. Had he not done that, Rick, what we would be talking about right now is the status of the nation's largest manhunt right now instead of talking about the suspect.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis posted on X after the attempted assassination saying, quote, the state of Florida will be conducting its own investigation regarding the attempted assassination at Trump International Golf Club. The people deserve the truth about the would-be assassin and how he was able to get within 500 yards of the former president and current GOP nominee. 2 attempts in 2 months. And again, Mark, I mean, we all would want the president to be safe. We would all hope that after that first attempt, he would be safe. And yet, this guy was able to sit there for 12 hours. And, I mean, good for that civilian for calling in his truck, but my guess is heads are going to roll at this point.
They should, and I tell you what, right now, if I was, and I know we already lost one, but if I was a current assistant director of Secret Service, I would have tendered my resignation. At the end of the day, look, I want to reiterate this, Rick. This is not the rank and file. We've talked about at great length some great actions that were taken by the rank and file with respect to this assassination attempt. This is a leadership issue. I learned a long time ago in the Marine Corps, a leader is responsible for everything their unit does or fails to do. And I'll go back. I think this is a significant foundational element in their methodology. They approach this from a category methodology rather than a threat-based, intelligence-driven methodology. And I think that's a part of their culture and their mindset. And they looked at this OTR. Hey, when we have an OTR, this is what we do. We do a certain level of protection. We put a Secret Service out in advance of a couple of holes, and that's what we do because it's an OTR. No, this is not a normal OTR. This is not a normal VIP. We've already rattled off the significant threats against him. That's ridiculous. It's preposterous to think that that's an okay methodology to use.
Mark, I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know if you do either. But is it up to the Secret Service to decide how many agents, how much coverage they're going to give the former president, or does the White House need to sign off on that?
No, it's totally up to the Secret Service. Now, there could be some exceptions depending on the event, maybe an overseas event, and there's going to be some dialogue. The Secret Service will say, hey, look, we're concerned about our ability to provide the level of protection needed, given a set of circumstances, and that dialogue will happen. But at the end of the day, the operational decision with respect to how many assets they need in place is going to be made by the Secret Service, and that's where it should rest. And that's why I say, the decision to not sweep before he hit the golf course, the decision to not have any law enforcement present outside that perimeter, make sure somebody didn't get into that fence line, that was a decision made by someone in the United States Secret Service leadership, not the rank and file.
Mark, we're going to ask you to stick around through this break so we can discuss with you how this second attempt against President Donald Trump could affect his campaign. We have a bunch more questions for you, Mark Morgan, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this.